The morning sun glared off the polished tarmac as Alicia Rhodes stepped onto the private airfield. She came to sign the biggest contract of her career, but they mocked her, degraded her, and thought they could break her spirit. But in one shocking moment, she flips the script and detonates a move that sends shockwaves through the entire aviation industry. Just when it looks like she's won, a dark secret surfaces, a powerful scheme to destroy her reputation and freeze her company's money. How far will these billionaires go to crush her? And can she fight back before everything she's built comes crashing down? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Alicia Rhodes stood at her penthouse window, watching the sunrise paint Manhattan's skyline in shades of gold. Her reflection in the glass showed the same calm, dignified expression she'd worn through countless battles in her career. But today felt different. Today would change everything. The smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries drifted from her kitchen, where Sasha Monroe was setting up their breakfast. The young woman had arrived early, as always, bringing not just breakfast, but her characteristic energy and unwavering support. "Everything's ready, Ms. Rhodes," Sasha called out, arranging fresh fruit on delicate china plates. Alicia turned from the window, taking in the spread before her. "Sasha, how many times do I have to tell you? When it's just us, please call me Alicia." Sasha smiled, though Alicia could see the nervous energy in her movements as she straightened an already perfectly aligned fork. "Sorry, Alicia. I guess old habits die hard, especially on big days like this." They sat at the marble breakfast bar, the morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Alicia noticed Sasha hadn't touched her croissant, instead fidgeting with her tablet. "What's on your mind?" Alicia asked, stirring honey into her tea. Sasha looked up, her eyes filled with concern. "I've been monitoring their social media. The jet owners, I mean. They've been posting about today's meeting, but—" She hesitated. "But?" "The tone feels off, like they're putting on a show. And some of their friends have been making these subtle comments about new money and maintaining standards." Sasha's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. "I know I might be reading too much into it, but—" "You're not," Alicia said firmly. "Your instincts are usually right about these things. That's why I value your perspective so much." She reached for her phone, checking the final contract details one more time. $770 million. That's what's at stake today. But more than that, it's about breaking into a space that's been exclusive for far too long. Sasha nodded, finally taking a bite of her croissant. "I did some research on their past deals. You're the first black CEO they've ever partnered with, and a woman at that." "Which is exactly why this has to work," Alicia said, her voice steady but intense. "This isn't just about expanding our aviation division. It's about showing every little girl who looks like us that these spaces belong to them too." They ate in comfortable silence for a few moments, both women lost in thought. Alicia remembered her own journey, starting from nothing, fighting through racism and sexism at every level. She'd built her empire from the ground up, earning every victory through intelligence, determination, and an unwavering belief in herself. "Do you remember what you told me on my first day?" Sasha asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Alicia raised an eyebrow. "Remind me. You said that in this business, we have to be twice as good to get half as far. But then you smiled and said, that's exactly why we'd win, because we're always 10 times better than they expect." A warm smile spread across Alicia's face. "And look at you now, running our entire digital strategy, keeping us 3 steps ahead of everyone else." "I learned from the best," Sasha replied, her earlier nervousness replaced with determination. "So what's our game plan for today?" Alicia stood, walking to her briefcase to double-check the contracts. "We arrive exactly on time. Not early, not late. We stay professional, no matter what they throw at us. And we close this deal with the same dignity and excellence we bring to everything else. Sasha began clearing the breakfast dishes, her movements precise and efficient. The helicopter's ready whenever you are. Weather report shows clear skies all the way to the Hamptons. They moved through their preparation routine with practiced ease. Alicia chose a perfectly tailored white suit that projected both power and poise, while Sasha gathered their materials into sleek leather portfolios. As they rode the private elevator down to the helipad, Alicia noticed Sasha taking slow, deliberate breaths, a technique she'd taught her for managing pre-meeting jitters. "Remember," Alicia said softly, "we've earned our place at this table. Every document is perfect, every number adds up, and every term has been vetted by the best lawyers in New York. We are not asking for permission to be there." The helicopter waited on the rooftop, its blades already spinning in the morning air. As they approached, Alicia caught their reflection in the polished surface. Two black women in impeccable business attire, carrying billion-dollar dreams in their briefcases. The flight to the Hamptons gave them time to review their strategy one final time. Sasha pulled up the dossiers she'd compiled on each of the jet consortium's owners. Old money, exclusive clubs, and a history of dealing only with people who looked exactly like them. As they approached the private airfield, the disparity in welcome became immediately apparent. Other arriving executives were being greeted with red carpets and champagne service. But as their helicopter touched down on their designated spot, Alicia and Sasha saw only a junior staff member holding a clipboard, looking distinctly uninterested in their arrival. "Well," Sasha muttered under her breath as they gathered their things, "I guess they're not rolling out the red carpet for us." Alicia adjusted her suit jacket with practiced precision. "That's all right," she said, her voice carrying the same quiet confidence that had taken her from poverty to billions. "We'll build our own." They stepped onto the tarmac, the morning sun now high and bright above them. Around them, private jets worth hundreds of millions gleamed in neat rows. Their owners gathered in small groups, stealing glances at the newcomers who dared to enter their exclusive world. Alicia and Sasha made their way across the vast tarmac, their heels clicking against the smooth surface in perfect sync. The morning sun cast long shadows behind them, but neither woman squinted or showed any sign of discomfort. They'd learned long ago that every movement, every expression would be scrutinized. Around them, clusters of billionaires huddled near their gleaming jets, their conversations dropping to whispers as the two women passed. Alicia caught fragments of their comments, each one intended to be just loud enough to hear. "Well, this is certainly different," one man in an expensive suit remarked to his companion, adjusting his gold cufflinks with exaggerated motion. "Times are changing," another responded with a smirk, "though some changes are more surprising than others." Sasha's shoulders tensed slightly, but Alicia maintained her measured pace. She'd weathered far worse than whispered insults on her path to success. Each step was deliberate, her posture regal, as if she owned every inch of ground beneath her feet. "Stay focused," Alicia murmured to Sasha, noting how her assistant's hand had tightened around her portfolio. "Their words can't touch us unless we let them." They passed a row of pristine private jets, each one more luxurious than the last. The morning light caught their polished surfaces, reflecting the wealth and privilege of their owners. A group of men in expensive golf attire paused their conversation to stare openly, their faces a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed disdain. "I heard she started as a cleaning lady," one of them stage whispered, causing his companions to snicker. "Guess she cleaned up pretty well." Sasha's jaw clenched, but Alicia touched her arm gently. "Remember what we discussed," she said softly. "Their words reveal more about them than us." As they approached the main gathering area, the consortium's owners stood in a tight circle, their backs deliberately turned. Only when Alicia and Sasha were a few feet away did they slowly turn around, their faces arranged in artificial smiles. "Ms. Rhodes," said Victor Sterling, the consortium's lead partner, extending his hand with obvious reluctance. "You're punctual, I'll give you that." "Mr. Sterling," Alicia replied, her handshake firm and professional. "Thank you for hosting us today." "Yes, well," he said, withdrawing his hand quickly and wiping it discreetly on his jacket. "We do try to be inclusive these days." The other owners exchanged knowing looks, their smirks poorly hidden behind expensive sunglasses. One of them, Charles Whitman III, stepped forward with an exaggerated bow. "It's quite bold of you," he said, his voice dripping with false admiration, "to dream so big." He emphasized the last word as if it were a joke only his peers would understand. Sasha shifted the portfolios in her arms, her discomfort visible only to Alicia, who had learned to read her assistant's subtle cues. The young woman's usual confidence was being tested by the thick atmosphere of prejudice surrounding them. "We've prepared the aircraft for your demonstration flight," Sterling announced, gesturing vaguely toward the far end of the airfield. "If you'll follow me." They walked as a group, with Alicia and Sasha noticeably separated from the others. The owners continued their conversation as if the two women weren't present, discussing their recent yacht purchases and exclusive club memberships. "Speaking of the club," one owner said loudly, "we really must be more careful about our membership criteria. Some people simply don't understand our traditions." The further they walked, the more obvious it became that they were heading away from the pristine jets near the main hangars. The well-maintained tarmac gave way to older, cracked concrete. The gleaming aircraft grew scarcer, replaced by older models in various states of repair. Sterling finally stopped near a hangar that had seen better days. With a flourish that couldn't mask his smirk, he gestured to an aircraft partially hidden in the shadows. "Here we are, Ms. Rhodes, your demonstration model." Alicia and Sasha stood in silence, taking in the sight before them. The jet was at least 20 years old, its once white exterior now a dingy gray. Dust and grime covered the windows, and one of the wheel covers was visibly rusted. "We thought this would be more appropriate for your needs," Whitman added, not even trying to hide his amusement. "After all, we wouldn't want you to feel overwhelmed by anything too sophisticated." The other owners chuckled openly now, their earlier pretense of politeness abandoned. One of them pulled out his phone, clearly eager to document what they assumed would be Alicia's humiliation. The aircraft sat there like a prop in their cruel joke, its condition a deliberate insult to everything Alicia had built. This wasn't just a used plane. It was a message, carefully chosen to put her in her place. Sasha's breath caught audibly, her eyes wide with disbelief and growing anger. The portfolios in her arms trembled slightly, but she held her position, waiting for Alicia's response. The owners watched expectantly, their faces showing the satisfaction of people accustomed to wielding power as a weapon. They clearly anticipated tears, outrage, or desperate attempts to salvage the situation. Any reaction that would confirm their assumptions about this woman who dared to enter their exclusive world. Sterling spread his hands in a gesture of mock concern. "Is something wrong, Ms. Rhodes? This is a perfectly functional aircraft. Some might say it's more your style." The morning sun had climbed higher, casting harsh shadows across the scene. The contrast between this neglected corner of the airfield and the gleaming jets in the distance couldn't have been more stark, or more intentional. Alicia stood motionless before the aging aircraft, her expression unreadable. The morning breeze carried more snickers and whispers from the growing crowd of onlookers. Several guests had wandered over, drawn by the spectacle the owners had orchestrated. "Perhaps we should explain the basic controls," Whitman said, his voice thick with condescension. "I know these things can be quite complicated for Certain people. Sterling nodded in mock sympathy. We wouldn't want any accidents. Safety first, especially when dealing with newcomers to our elevated circles. Sasha's fingers gripped the portfolios so tightly her knuckles turned white. The young woman's chest rose and fell with quick, angry breaths as she watched these wealthy men openly mock her mentor. I mean, really, another owner chimed in, emboldened by the audience's reaction, we should be thanked for even considering this arrangement. Some people don't know their proper place these days. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Several phones were raised, their owners eager to capture what they assumed would be a humiliating moment for the black CEO who had dared to dream of joining their exclusive ranks. Alicia slowly turned to face the group, her movements deliberate and controlled. The morning sun caught her face, highlighting the quiet dignity in her features. She'd spent decades in boardrooms and business meetings where she was the only person of color, the only woman, the only one who had climbed up from poverty instead of inheriting wealth. Each challenge had strengthened her resolve. Each insult had sharpened her purpose. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the tarmac. Is this your idea of humor? The consortium owner's smirk faltered slightly at her calm tone. He'd expected tears, outrage, or desperate negotiation. Anything but this composed response. Now, Ms. Rhodes, he said, recovering his arrogant demeanor, let's not be overly sensitive. We're simply trying to make you comfortable. This aircraft is perfectly adequate for someone of your background. More snickers rippled through the crowd. A woman in expensive tennis whites whispered something to her companion, both of them glancing at Alicia's impeccable business suit with obvious disdain. My background, Alicia repeated softly, letting the words hang in the air. Please, Mr. Sterling, elaborate on what you mean by that. The challenge in her voice was subtle, but unmistakable. Sterling shifted uncomfortably, aware that the crowd was now watching him as much as they were watching her. Well, you know, he blustered. Your people aren't exactly known for. I mean, this is a very specialized industry with certain standards. My people? Alicia's eyebrow arched slightly. Do continue, Mr. Sterling. I'm fascinated by your expertise on my people. The silence stretched taut as a wire. Several onlookers lowered their phones, suddenly less eager to document this exchange. Sterling's face had turned an interesting shade of red. Now see here, Whitman stepped in, his voice sharp with anger. If you can't take a joke, perhaps you don't belong in this business at all. We're doing you a favor, even considering this deal. Alicia reached into her jacket pocket and withdrew her phone. Her movements were unhurried, almost casual. But there was nothing casual about the steel in her voice when she spoke again. A favor, she said, her thumb hovering over the phone's screen. Is that what you call this display of bigotry? This carefully planned humiliation? Now wait just a minute, Sterling started, but Alicia held up her hand, silencing him with the gesture. No, Mr. Sterling. You've had your moment of amusement. Now I'll have mine. She pressed a number on her speed dial, putting the call on speaker. Marcus, this is Alicia Rhodes. I need you to execute Termination Clause 7 immediately on the consortium deal. Yes, the full $770 million. And Marcus, make sure the press release mentions exactly why we're walking away. The silence on the tarmac was absolute now. Sterling's face had gone from red to pale, and Whitman seemed to be choking on his own tongue. The other owners stood frozen, their earlier smugness evaporating as they realized what was happening. You can't do this, Sterling finally managed to sputter. The penalties for breach of contract are voided, Alicia cut in smoothly, when there is clear evidence of discriminatory practices, which we have now documented quite thoroughly, thanks to your little performance today." She gestured at the gathered crowd with their phones. "So many witnesses. So many recordings. My legal team will have a field day with this, Mr. Sterling." Sasha stepped forward, her earlier discomfort replaced by fierce pride as she watched her mentor dismantle these men's arrogance with surgical precision. "The termination paperwork will be delivered within the hour," Alicia continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent airfield. "I suggest you contact your lawyers. You'll need them." She turned to the dilapidated aircraft, then back to the assembled owners. "This plane is indeed perfect for someone of my background, gentlemen, because people like me, people who have fought for every opportunity, who have earned every success, we know the difference between true value and shallow appearances. We know that real power isn't found in cruelty or exclusion." Her phone buzzed with an incoming message. "Ah, that would be the press release going live. Shall I read it to you?" Sterling stepped forward, his face contorted with rage. "Now see here, you can't just—" "I can, I have, and I did," Alicia stated firmly. "The deal is cancelled, and you, gentlemen, have just made the most expensive mistake of your privileged lives." She turned to Sasha, who was beaming now. "Come on, Sasha. We have more important matters to attend to than educating these— what's the word they used? Ah, yes, these traditionalists." The two women began walking back toward their waiting helicopter, leaving behind a group of stunned billionaires whose carefully constructed world of exclusion and privilege had just been shaken to its core. Behind them, phones started buzzing as news of the canceled deal spread through financial networks. The $770 million deal that had been the talk of the aviation world was dead, killed by the very bigotry its owners couldn't help but display. The morning air crackled with tension as phones began buzzing across the tarmac. Stock alerts, news notifications, and frantic messages lit up screens everywhere. The gathered elite, who had moments ago been laughing at Alicia's expense, now stood in stunned silence, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. 770 million, someone whispered, the number rippling through the crowd like a shockwave. Gone. Just like that. Sterling grabbed his phone, his hands shaking as he scrolled through the breaking news. The color had drained from his face, leaving him ashen and sweating in his expensive suit. Whitman was already barking orders into his device, demanding to speak with his legal team immediately. "My God!" a woman in tennis whites gasped, staring at her screen. "Their stock is already dropping. Look at this." Alicia and Sasha maintained their measured pace toward the helicopter, neither rushing nor dawdling. Behind them, the chaos grew. The same phones that had been raised to record Alicia's humiliation were now capturing a very different scene. Powerful men in complete disarray. "Ms. Rhodes!" Sterling called out, his voice having lost its earlier condescension. "Please, let's discuss this reasonably." Alicia didn't break stride or turn around. Sasha glanced back briefly, catching sight of the consortium owner actually jogging a few steps in their direction, before one of his lawyers grabbed his arm, shaking his head frantically. "You don't understand what you're doing," Whitman shouted, his face now mottled with rage and fear. "This will have consequences." At this, Alicia did pause. She turned slowly, fixing Whitman with a gaze that made him take an involuntary step backward. "Consequences?" she asked, her voice carrying clearly across the tarmac. "Like the consequences of systemic discrimination? Or the consequences of believing your wealth makes you untouchable?" The gathered crowd shifted uncomfortably. Several people who had been laughing earlier now seemed intensely interested in their shoes or the sky, anywhere but meeting Alicia's steady gaze. "My entire career has been about consequences, Mr. Whitman," she continued. "The consequences of working twice as hard for half the recognition. The consequences of refusing to accept the limitations others tried to place on me. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Trust me, I understand consequences perfectly. A young associate came running across the tarmac, waving his tablet frantically at Sterling. Sir, sir, the Asian markets are already reacting. We're looking at a potential loss of... His voice dropped to a whisper, but Sterling's reaction, stumbling backward as if physically struck, told everyone all they needed to know about the numbers. Alicia resumed her walk to the helicopter, Sasha falling into step beside her. The pilot had already started the rotors, their rhythmic thump, thump, thump providing a steady backbeat to the chaos erupting behind them. "You'll never work in this industry again," someone shouted desperately. Sasha saw her mentor's lips curve into a small, knowing smile. They both knew the truth. Alicia Rhodes didn't need to work in their industry. She was creating her own. They reached the helicopter, and Sasha helped Alicia aboard before climbing in herself. As they settled into their seats and donned their headsets, the view through the windows showed the full impact of what had just transpired. The once orderly gathering had devolved into clusters of panicked conversations. Lawyers were arriving in expensive cars, parking haphazardly on the tarmac. The owners, who had been so smug minutes ago, were now huddled together, their faces drawn with worry as they stared at their phones. The helicopter lifted off smoothly, banking away from the airfield. Alicia gazed out the window, her expression thoughtful. Sasha saw her mentor's hand move to touch the simple gold locket she always wore, a gift from her grandmother, who had cleaned houses to help put Alicia through college. "Are you okay?" Sasha asked through the headset, concern evident in her voice. Alicia turned from the window, and Sasha saw not weariness or doubt in her eyes, but a fierce, quiet pride. "I'm more than okay, Sasha. I'm free." The helicopter banked again, giving them a final view of the chaos they'd left behind. Alicia watched it recede, her mind traveling back through the years, to the first bank that refused her a loan, to the investors who wouldn't meet with a black woman, to every boardroom where she'd been mistaken for the help. "You know," she said, her voice soft but clear through the headset, "my grandmother used to tell me that dignity isn't something others can take from you. It's something you protect by refusing to let anyone make you smaller than you are." Sasha nodded, understanding the weight of those words. She'd seen Alicia face countless challenges with that same unshakable dignity. "When I started in this business," Alicia continued, "people told me to be grateful for whatever scraps I could get, to accept the little indignities, the jokes, the condescension." She shook her head. "But I made a promise to myself, and to every young person who would come after me, that I wouldn't just succeed. I would succeed on my own terms." The helicopter rose higher, leaving the Hamptons behind. Below them, the landscape stretched out in a patchwork of wealth and privilege that had tried to exclude them. But up here, none of those artificial barriers mattered. "My legacy isn't just about money or success," Alicia said, her voice taking on a tone of steel determination. "It's about showing the next generation that they don't have to accept less than they deserve, that they don't have to smile through insults or pretend not to notice discrimination." She turned to Sasha, her eyes bright with purpose. "We're going to build something better than what those men tried to destroy today. Something built on merit, not prejudice, on innovation, not inheritance." Sasha watched her mentor's face, seeing in it the same strength that had inspired her to believe in her own dreams. "They never saw it coming, did they?" she asked. "They thought they could humiliate you, but they just gave you a platform to show everyone exactly who they are." Alicia smiled, a real smile this time, full of warmth and determination. "They thought wealth made them untouchable. They forgot that real power comes from knowing who you are and standing firm in that truth." The helicopter continued its journey back to Manhattan, carrying two women who had just demonstrated that the greatest power lies not in the ability to tear others down, but in the courage to stand up and say, "Enough." The sleek helicopter touched down on the rooftop helipad of a Manhattan skyscraper just as the sun was setting, painting the city skyline in shades of amber and gold. Alicia and Sasha stepped onto the landing pad, their hair whipping in the wind from the slowing rotors. A black town car waited nearby, its driver standing at attention beside the open door. "Ms. Rhodes," the driver nodded respectfully. "Mr. Whitaker is already at the restaurant." "Thank you, James," Alicia said, sliding into the back seat with Sasha following. The interior was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos they'd left behind in the Hamptons. "I ordered extra security for the office tomorrow," Sasha said, checking her tablet. "And I've started monitoring all major news outlets and social channels." Alicia nodded, watching the city lights blur past her window. "Good thinking. They won't take this lying down." The car pulled up to an exclusive restaurant in Tribeca, the kind with no sign out front and a waiting list months long. But tonight, they were escorted immediately to a private room in the back, where Thomas Whitaker sat reviewing documents spread across the white tablecloth. Thomas stood as they entered, his tall frame and silver hair commanding attention even in casual evening wear. "There's my favorite client who just cost me my weekend plans," he said, with a wry smile, pulling out chairs for both women. "Sorry about that, Thomas," Alicia said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "Are you kidding?" Thomas settled back into his seat, eyes twinkling. "I haven't had this much fun since we took down that corrupt board in Seattle." He gestured to the waiter. "3 martinis? Extra dry. We're celebrating." "Celebrating?" Sasha asked, arranging her napkin. "The deal just fell apart." "The deal didn't fall apart," Thomas corrected, shuffling his papers. "Our CEO here executed a perfect termination clause after they breached contract through discriminatory behavior. Big difference." He pulled out a particular document. "Speaking of which, I need your exact account of what happened. Every detail." The waiter arrived with their drinks as Alicia began recounting the events at the airfield. Thomas took notes, occasionally interrupting with clarifying questions. Sasha noticed his jaw tightening as Alicia described the jokes and the dirty plane. "Idiots," Thomas muttered, shaking his head. "Complete idiots. Did they really think you'd just smile and take it?" "They're not used to consequences," Alicia said, sipping her martini. "That's about to change." Thomas nodded, reviewing his notes. "The termination is rock solid. They breached multiple clauses, including the anti-discrimination provisions we specifically added." He looked up at Alicia. "But you need to know. They're already mounting a response." Sasha pulled out her phone, showing them a screen full of notifications. "It's starting. Private industry forums, business gossip sites." Alicia leaned in to read, her expression unchanging as she scrolled through comments questioning her judgment, her temperament, her competence. Words like emotional and unstable appeared repeatedly. "Classic playbook," Thomas said, his voice hard. "When they can't attack the decision, they attack the decision-maker. Make it about your personality rather than their behavior." A waiter appeared with their meals, salmon for Alicia, pasta for Sasha, steak for Thomas. But the food went largely untouched as they continued strategizing. "We need to get ahead of this," Sasha said, still monitoring her phone. "The narrative is spreading fast in certain circles." Thomas nodded. "I've already drafted statements for the major financial papers. We stick to the facts. They breached, you terminated. Clean, professional, by the book. They'll try to paint me as angry, irrational," Alicia said, her voice steady. "A black woman who couldn't handle the pressure and had an emotional outburst." "Let them try," Thomas replied, stabbing at his steak. "We have witnesses. That young associate who came running up about the Asian markets. He's already reached out. Says he has recordings of planning meetings where they specifically discussed how to put you in your place. Sasha's eyes widened. They recorded themselves planning this? Arrogance makes people careless, Alicia said, finally taking a bite of her salmon. They never thought they'd face consequences. Thomas pulled out another document. We need to discuss immediate protective measures. Asset security, data backups, employee communications. They spent the next hour going through contingency plans, their food growing cold as they worked. Sasha took detailed notes, while Thomas outlined potential legal challenges, and Alicia made decisive calls on each point. One more thing, Thomas said as they were finishing. The termination hits their stock hard tomorrow. They'll be desperate. Expect personal attacks, planted stories, maybe even threats. Alicia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then turned it to show the others. On the screen was a private industry forum post, already gaining traction. Sources close to Rhodes reveal pattern of erratic behavior. Questions raised about stability and judgment. And so it begins, Thomas said grimly. Let them come, Alicia replied, her voice calm but filled with determination. I didn't get where I am by backing down from bullies. Sasha watched her mentor, amazed as always by her composure. Where others might show anger or fear, Alicia displayed only quiet resolve. The waiter appeared with the check, which Thomas immediately grabbed. My turn, he insisted. Consider it an investment in what promises to be a very interesting case. As they stood to leave, Alicia's phone buzzed again. More notifications, more forums, more concerned sources questioning her mental state and business acumen. The smear campaign was gathering momentum. Cars waiting outside, Sasha said, checking her own phone. I've got alerts set up for any mention of your name or the company. We'll know everything they're saying, where they're saying it. Thomas helped Alicia with her coat. Get some rest tonight, he advised. Tomorrow we start pushing back. They walked through the now quiet restaurant, their footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Outside, the city had taken on its nighttime energy. Streets still busy with people and traffic, despite the late hour. James held the car door open. Before getting in, Alicia paused, looking up at the towering buildings around them. Buildings that housed many of the same people who were now trying to destroy her reputation. You know what my grandmother used to say about lies? She asked Sasha, who was checking one last alert on her phone. What's that? She said, lies are like shadows. They seem big and scary until you shine a light on them. Then they disappear. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Alicia's corner office, casting long shadows across the polished conference table. Her core team had gathered early, armed with laptops and tablets, displaying the overnight damage. Marcus, her head of communications, stood at the wall screen, cycling through screenshots of industry forums and social media posts. Each one painted a darker picture than the last. They're coordinating through private channels, he explained, highlighting particular phrases that kept recurring. Unstable, emotional, difficult to work with. The same language appears across different platforms, posted by seemingly unrelated accounts. Alicia sat at the head of the table, her posture perfect despite having barely slept. She wore a crisp white suit that seemed to glow in the morning light, a deliberate choice that made her look both powerful and approachable. Show me the timeline, she said, her voice steady. Marcus nodded, pulling up a graph. The first posts appeared within hours of the deal cancellation. By midnight, we had major industry influencers expressing concern about your judgment. This morning, 3 different financial blogs ran stories questioning your leadership style. Sasha, sitting to Alicia's right, scrolled through her tablet. They're targeting specific demographics. The posts in women's business forums emphasize emotional instability. In traditional finance circles, They're pushing the difficult-to-work-with angle. It's methodical. Of course it is, Alicia said, studying the screen. They've probably had this playbook ready for months, waiting for any excuse to use it. The door opened, and Thomas Whitaker strode in, looking fresh, despite the early hour. "Morning, everyone. I see we're already diving into the mud pit." "Pull up the Wilson interview," Alicia instructed Marcus. The screen changed to show a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, speaking to a business news channel. Though his words were carefully chosen, the message was clear. Alicia Rhodes was becoming a liability to her own company. "That's their board chairman," Thomas noted, loosening his tie as he sat down. "Notice how he never directly attacks you? Just expresses concern about recent behavior. Legally careful, but socially devastating." "They're trying to spook our investors," said Janet, Alicia's CFO. She had been quietly taking notes throughout the presentation. "I'm already getting calls from some of our more nervous shareholders." Alicia stood, walking to the window. The city sprawled below, already humming with morning activity. She watched her reflection in the glass, calm, composed, unshakable. "Marcus," she said, turning back to the room, "what's our reach look like?" He pulled up a new charts. "We've got solid relationships with major outlets, especially those focused on diversity in business. Several journalists have already reached out, wanting your side of the story." "Who specifically?" "Sarah Chen from Business Weekly. She did that piece on discrimination in venture capital last year. Michael Torres at the Financial Times. He's been covering systemic racism in luxury industries. And Diana Washington wants you for her primetime slot tonight." Alicia nodded slowly, processing the options. "Diana's show reaches the right audience, but it's too soon. We need to build our case first." She walked back to the table. "Set up interviews with Sarah and Michael. They understand the bigger picture." "What's our message?" Sasha asked, ready to take notes. "The truth," Alicia said simply. "No spin, no emotional appeals. We lay out exactly what happened at that airfield. Let people see the pattern for what it is." Thomas leaned forward. "We should release the contract termination details. Show how they breached the anti-discrimination clauses." "Already on it," Marcus said, typing rapidly. "I've got draft statements ready for review." Janet raised her hand slightly. "What about the shareholders?" "They're going to want reassurance. Schedule a call with the major stakeholders for this afternoon," Alicia decided. "I'll walk them through our position personally and prepare a memo detailing our financial strength. Remind them why they invested with us in the first place." The team worked steadily through the morning, crafting responses and planning their counteroffensive. Sasha coordinated with security to monitor for any escalation in threats. Marcus drafted talking points for the upcoming interviews. Janet prepared financial documents showing the company's solid foundation. Around 11, Marcus's phone buzzed. "Sarah Chen can meet at 2. Michael Torres wants to do a longer sit-down tomorrow morning." "Perfect," Alicia said. "Book them both. Sarah's piece will set the tone, and Michael can go deeper into the industry implications." Thomas reviewed the interview outlines. "Remember, stick to verifiable facts. They'll try to bait you into an emotional response. Don't give them the satisfaction." "I've been handling their type for 30 years, Alicia reminded him with a slight smile. "They've never seen me lose my composure, and they won't start now." The team broke for lunch, but Alicia remained in her office, reviewing the morning's developments with Sasha. "Their strategy is backfiring," Sasha observed, showing Alicia new social media trends. "People are starting to question why they're attacking your character instead of addressing the incident." "That's because they can't defend what they did," Alicia replied. "So they're trying to change the conversation." She stood, walking to a small table that held a chess set. Moving a piece thoughtfully, she continued, "But they've made a crucial mistake." "What's that?" They think this is about me, about my feelings, my reaction. She moved another piece. They don't understand that I'm just the catalyst. This is about exposing a system that's been hurting people for generations. Sasha watched her mentor, understanding dawning. You're going to use their attacks to highlight the bigger problem. Exactly. Alicia's smile was subtle, but determined. Every time they call me difficult, we show similar language used against other minority executives. When they question my stability, we reveal patterns of character assassination against women in power. Marcus knocked on the doorframe. Sarah Chen's confirmed for 2 o'clock. She wants to focus on systemic discrimination in luxury industries, using yesterday as a case study. Perfect, Alicia said, returning to her desk. Set up a prep session at 1. And make sure we have all the documentation ready. Contract clauses, witness statements, everything. As Marcus left, Sasha organized the afternoon schedule. The shareholder call is at 4, then Diana Washington's producer wants to discuss timing for later this week. Alicia nodded, already reviewing Sarah Chen's previous articles. One step at a time. First, we show them what real leadership looks like. Then we change the game entirely. At precisely 2 o'clock, Alicia sat across from Sarah Chen in a sleek podcast studio. The intimate setting made their conversation feel personal, authentic. Sarah adjusted her microphone while her producer counted down. Welcome back to Breaking Barriers. I'm Sarah Chen, and today we're joined by Alicia Rhodes, CEO of Rhodes Aviation. Alicia, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, Sarah. Alicia's voice carried its usual quiet authority. Let's start with yesterday. You were at Hampton Executive Airfield to finalize a major deal with Elite Jets Consortium. What happened? Alicia took a measured breath. I arrived with my assistant for what should have been a standard closing meeting. We'd spent months negotiating a $770 million joint venture. All the paperwork was ready. But something went wrong. From the moment we stepped onto that tarmac, the reception was telling. Alicia described the scene with precise detail. Other executives were being greeted warmly. We received stares and whispers. Sarah leaned forward. Can you be more specific about these whispers? I heard comments about how some people don't belong on this side of the runway. There were jokes about me getting lost, suggestions that I must be someone's assistant. Alicia's tone remained even, but her words carried weight. How did your actual assistant react? Sasha was upset, naturally. But we've both faced similar situations before. We stayed focused on the business at hand. Sarah checked her notes. The deal fell apart over an aircraft inspection. That's what they'd like people to believe, Alicia said. The reality is they presented us with a dirty, outdated plane for our demonstration flight. When I questioned this, they said it was more my style. And this was different from what was promised in the contract? Substantially different. The contract specified a new G650 for the demonstration. Instead, they offered an old jet that hadn't been properly maintained, parked far from their pristine fleet. What went through your mind at that moment? Alicia's response was measured. I thought about every person who's ever been told to accept less than what they've earned. About every qualified candidate who's been shown to the back door instead of the front office. The studio felt charged with tension as she continued. So I made a decision. I called my legal team and canceled the deal, right there on the tarmac. That's a $770 million decision, Sarah noted. Some might call it rash. Some might, Alicia agreed. But I would argue it's the most rational decision possible. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Their actions demonstrated clearly how they would treat our partnership. Sarah shifted topics. There are rumors circulating about your emotional state during this encounter. Yes, I've seen those. A hint of amusement touched Alicia's voice. Apparently, Maintaining one's dignity in the face of discrimination now qualifies as unstable behavior. You seem very calm about these attacks. Because they're predictable, Sarah. When you can't defend your actions, you attack the character of the person exposing them. It's a tactic as old as discrimination itself. The interview continued for another 30 minutes, with Alicia methodically addressing each criticism that had been leveled against her. Her responses were consistently measured, factual, and devastating in their clarity. As they wrapped up, Sarah asked one final question. What message do you have for others facing similar situations? Know your worth, Alicia said firmly. Don't let anyone convince you to accept disrespect as the price of admission. And remember, when you stand up for yourself, you're standing up for everyone who comes after you. The producer signaled the end of recording. Sarah removed her headphones, looking impressed. That was powerful, Alicia. We'll have this edited and up by tonight. Thank you, Sarah. You asked the right questions. Back in her office, Alicia found her team already monitoring the initial response. The unedited interview had been streamed live on the podcast's premium platform, and clips were spreading rapidly. Look at this, Sasha said, showing her phone. Black executives across industries are sharing their own stories. Stand with Rhodes is trending. Marcus nodded from his desk. Former Elite Jets employees are reaching out. They want to talk about their experiences. Alicia was reviewing the coverage when Sasha suddenly stiffened, staring at her screen. Alicia, you need to see this. The email had no subject line, sent from an anonymous address. The message was brief, but clear. Back off now. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Keep pushing, and we'll destroy everything you've built. Your choice. Sasha pulled up more emails, all with similar threats. Each one more specific than the last, detailing ways they planned to ruin Rhodes Aviation. Alicia read them calmly, her expression unchanged. Forward these to Thomas and our security team. And Sasha? Yes? Order dinner. We're going to be here late. She turned to Marcus. Get me everything you can on Elite Jet's financial structure. Every shell company. Every hidden partnership. What are you thinking? Sasha asked. Alicia's smile was subtle, but determined. They're threatening us because the interview worked. Now let's find out what they're so desperate to hide. The morning sun cast long shadows through the windows of Rhodes Aviation's executive floor as Alicia stepped out of the elevator. At 6:30 a.m., she was usually among the first to arrive, but today, a cluster of unfamiliar faces occupied the conference room. Morning, Marcus called out, looking tired but alert. Cybersecurity team's already here. They started sweeping our systems at 5. Alicia nodded, noting the earnest expressions on the security consultants' faces as they huddled over laptops. Their leader, a woman with steel-gray hair pulled into a tight bun, stood up when Alicia entered. Ms. Rhodes, I'm Janet Cooper from Digital Fortress. We need to talk. Her tone carried an urgency that made Alicia's spine straighten. Let's use my office. Alicia led the way, with Janet following close behind. Once inside, Janet didn't waste time with pleasantries. Someone's been trying to break into your financial system since yesterday afternoon. Sophisticated attempts? They're looking for vulnerabilities in your accounting software. Alicia's expression remained neutral, but her jaw tightened. How close did they get? Close enough to worry me. Janet pulled up a diagram on her tablet. They've made multiple attempts to access your payroll records, tax documents, and acquisition histories. The pattern suggests they're hunting for something they can use against you. Can you trace it? They're good at covering their tracks, but... Janet's fingers flew across the screen. The attacks are coming through various proxy servers. However, 3 of them trace back to addresses we've seen before in corporate espionage cases involving Elite Jet's consortium. Alicia's phone buzzed. Sasha had arrived. Moments later, her assistant entered with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Alicia. "What's our exposure?" Alicia asked, taking a sip. "Your current security is decent, but not equipped for this level of attack. We need to upgrade everything immediately." Janet pulled out a second tablet. "I've prepared recommendations. It's not cheap, but considering what's at stake—" "Do it," Alicia said without hesitation. "Whatever we need." For the next hour, Janet's team moved through the office like a well-oiled machine. They installed new security software, updated firewalls, and began the process of moving sensitive data to more secure servers. Marcus knocked on Alicia's door around 9, his face tight with concern. "The CFO's here. You need to see this." Robert Chen, Rhodes Aviation's chief financial officer, waited in the small conference room. His normally neat appearance showed signs of strain. Tie slightly askew, hair not quite perfectly combed. "They're trying to get to our audit records," he said as soon as Alicia entered. "I've been up all night monitoring unusual access attempts. They're particularly interested in our recent acquisitions and tax filings." "They're looking for dirt," Alicia said, settling into a chair. "Anything they can use to trigger an investigation." "That's my assessment, too." Robert spread several documents on the table. "The problem is, even though we're clean, a coordinated attack could still cause massive disruption. If they can plant even a hint of impropriety, they could freeze our assets pending investigation," Alicia finished. "How long would that take to resolve?" "Months, at minimum. Maybe years." Robert's expression was grim. "We're talking about potential payroll disruptions, contract delays, lost opportunities." Alicia stood, walking to the window. Below, Manhattan buzzed with morning traffic, unaware of the battle being waged in digital space above the streets. "Robert, I need you to start something for me." Quietly. She turned back to face him. "Begin a comprehensive audit trail. Document every transaction, every decision, every dollar that moves through this company. I want records so clean and clear that not even the most corrupt investigator could find fault." "That's a massive undertaking," Robert said, but he was already pulling out his laptop. "Break it into phases. Start with the most recent year, then work backward. Priority on anything touching elite jets or their subsidiaries." She paused. "And Robert? Keep this between us for now. The fewer people who know—" "Understood." He nodded, fingers already flying across his keyboard. Janet appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Rhodes, we found something else. Multiple attempts to access your personal emails and financial records, too. They're not just targeting the company. They're after you specifically." Alicia absorbed this without visible reaction, but her hand tightened slightly on her coffee cup. "Secure everything. Personal accounts, home networks, mobile devices, mine and my key executives." "Already on it." Janet hesitated. "There's something else. We found traces of surveillance software trying to activate the cameras on company devices. They want eyes inside your operation." The room fell silent. Robert looked up from his laptop, face pale. Marcus, who had been quietly taking notes in the corner, muttered something under his breath. "How many devices?" Alicia asked. "They tried to access cameras on at least 30 computers, including yours and your executive teams." Janet's voice was professional, but her eyes showed concern. "We're installing countermeasures now." Alicia turned to Marcus. "Get everyone together in the main conference room in 20 minutes. All department heads, key personnel. They need to know what we're dealing with." As the others filed out, Sasha entered with fresh coffee and a stack of messages. "The press is starting to ask questions about all the security consultants arriving this morning. Tell them we're conducting routine system upgrades." Alicia took the coffee, grateful for its warmth. "Standard procedure after a major contract cancellation." Sasha nodded, then lowered her voice. "Are you okay? This is getting intense." Alicia allowed herself a small smile. They think they can bully us into submission by threatening our technology, our records. They clearly haven't done their homework. She walked back to her office, where Janet's team had set up a command center of sorts. Screens displayed real-time security monitoring, intrusion detection systems, and network traffic analysis. "Robert," she called out as she passed the CFO's office, "start with last quarter's financials. Every transaction, every approval, every signature. Build me a wall they can't break through." The morning sun now streamed fully through the windows, illuminating the determined faces of her team as they worked to protect everything she'd built. They might be under attack, but Alicia Rhodes had never backed down from a fight, and she wasn't about to start now. The Manhattan skyline glowed orange in the setting sun as Alicia settled into her home office. Her elegant penthouse, usually a sanctuary of calm, now felt like a command center. 3 large monitors dominated her desk, showing the faces of some of the most powerful Black executives and community leaders in the country. "Thank you all for making time tonight," Alicia began, her voice steady despite the exhaustion of the day. "I know many of you had to rearrange schedules on short notice." Marcus Davidson, CEO of the largest Black-owned bank in America, spoke first. "When we heard what happened at that airfield, Alicia, we knew we had to respond. This isn't just about you. It's about all of us." Heads nodded across the screens. Dr. Regina Watson, president of the National Association of Black Business Leaders, leaned forward in her chair. "Tell us exactly what happened. We need details to fight this effectively." Alicia recounted the events at the Hamptons airfield, her voice never wavering. She described the dirty plane, the sneering comments, the orchestrated humiliation. As she spoke, she watched anger and recognition flash across the faces of her colleagues. "Classic playbook," said James Turner, founder of a major tech company. "They try to shame us in front of their peers, then act shocked when we stand up for ourselves. I've seen it 100 times." "But they didn't expect you to walk away from that deal," added Patricia Montgomery, a renowned civil rights attorney. "That scared them. Now they're trying to destroy your reputation before you can expose their behavior." Alicia nodded. "They've already started. Rumors about my stability, hints about financial impropriety. This morning, we caught them trying to hack our systems." "We need to hit back smart," said Marcus. "Not just defend you, but expose their whole system of exclusion. How many other Black entrepreneurs have they pushed out of deals? How many careers have they crushed?" Dr. Watson opened a document on her screen. "My team has been gathering data since your story broke. In the last decade, Elite Jets and their partner companies have had 0 Black board members. Less than 1% of their executives are Black. Their client list is even worse. And their treatment of employees is abysmal," added James. "I've had several former Elite Jets workers reach out to me since this started. The stories they're telling—" "That's our angle," Patricia interjected. "We gather these stories, document the pattern. Show this wasn't just one incident. It's their entire business model." Alicia listened as her colleagues brainstormed strategy. These were people who'd faced similar battles, who'd built empires despite systemic resistance. Their support meant everything. "I can have my foundation fund an independent investigation," offered Marcus. "Professional researchers, completely above board. We'll build an airtight case. My legal team will coordinate," Patricia added. "We'll make sure everything is documented properly. They'll try to discredit any evidence we present." Dr. Watson straightened in her chair. "The association can organize forums across the country, let other executives share their experiences, show the scope of the problem. And I'll mobilize tech leaders," said James. "We need to counter their digital attacks. I know the best cybersecurity experts in the business. Black-owned firms they won't expect." As they talked, Alicia's assistant Sasha moved quietly through the room, taking notes and occasionally whispering updates in Alicia's ear. The support staff at Rhodes Aviation was working late, implementing the new security measures and documenting financial records. "We need to think bigger than just elite jets," Alicia said during a pause in the discussion. "This is about changing the whole private aviation industry, breaking down barriers that have existed for decades." "Exactly," agreed Marcus. "We turn this attack into an opportunity. Show how their old boys network hurts innovation, limits growth, and ultimately costs them money." "Speaking of money," Patricia added, "we should look at their investors. How many pension funds and institutional investors are unknowingly supporting discriminatory practices? That could add real pressure." The discussion continued for another hour, crafting a comprehensive strategy. By the end, clear action items had been assigned. Marcus would launch the investigation. Patricia would coordinate legal resources. Dr. Watson would organize community outreach. James would handle technical support. "Thank you all," Alicia said as they wrapped up. "This means more than I can express." "We stand together," Dr. Watson replied firmly. "They thought they could isolate you. Instead, they've awakened a network they never knew existed." After the last screen went dark, Alicia sat back in her chair, processing everything. Sasha appeared with fresh tea and a stack of notes from the meeting. "That went well," Sasha said, arranging the papers on Alicia's desk. "Did you see how quickly they all mobilized?" "Because they've all been there," Alicia replied. "They know exactly what we're up against." A soft chime from her computer interrupted them. A new email had arrived. Sender unknown, subject line blank. Alicia's finger hovered over the mouse, remembering Janet's security warnings from that morning. "Should we call the tech team?" Sasha asked, concerned. "No," Alicia said after a moment. "This came through our new secure server. Someone worked hard to get this message through." She opened the email. The message was brief. "What they did to you was wrong. I have proof they're working with regulators to shut you down. Meeting tomorrow night. Location to follow. Come alone." Sasha read over her shoulder, frowning. "It could be a trap. Or it could be exactly what we need," Alicia replied. "Someone on the inside who's finally had enough." The city lights twinkled beyond her windows as Alicia considered her next move. The round table had given her powerful allies and a clear strategy. Now, fate seemed to be offering something more. Concrete evidence of corruption. She forwarded the email to Janet's team for analysis, then turned to Sasha. "Have security do a complete sweep of my schedule tomorrow. If this meeting happens, we need to be ready." Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Alicia's office as she reviewed security reports with Janet, her head of cybersecurity. The threats against Rhodes Aviation had escalated overnight, with more attempts to breach their systems. "They're getting desperate," Janet said, pointing to a spike in activity on her tablet. "But our new protocols are holding." A knock at the door interrupted them. Sasha entered with Marcus Davidson's head of security, who carried a small package. "This just arrived by special courier," Sasha explained. "Marcus's team intercepted and scanned it. It's clean." The package contained only a USB drive and a handwritten note. "Recorded at Elite Jet's private club last week. They never thought anyone was listening." Alicia gestured to Janet, who plugged the drive into a secure, isolated laptop. The first file was an audio recording, slightly muffled, but clear enough to hear familiar voices. Philip Lancaster's smug tone filled the room. "The regulators are all lined up. One phone call and they'll freeze every asset Rhodes has." "Already taken care of," Daniel Rourke replied, his words slightly slurred. "Paid enough to make sure they find irregularities in her books. She'll be too busy defending herself to cause any more trouble." Philip laughed. "Should have seen her face when we showed her that old plane. Like we'd ever let someone like her into our world." "Teach her to know her place," Daniel added. "Nobody walks away from us. By next week, Rhodes Aviation will be in free fall." Janet opened more files. Emails, bank transfers, meeting schedules. A complete trail showing how Philip and Daniel had systematically bribed regulators to target Alicia's company. "Call Thomas," Alicia told Sasha, referring to her attorney. "Get him here now, and contact Marcus's investigation team. They need to verify every piece of this." Within an hour, her office had transformed into a war room. Thomas Whitaker paced as he listened to the recordings again, taking detailed notes. Forensic accountants from Marcus's firm examined the financial documents, while Janet's team authenticated the digital trails. "This is exactly what we needed," Thomas said, pausing the playback. "But we have to move fast. Once they realize this leaked, they'll try to destroy evidence." "The regulators are already compromised," Janet added. "They could start their investigation any moment." Alicia stood at her window, watching the city below. "Then we go public before they can act. Full press conference, release everything at once. But first," she turned to Thomas, "what are the criminal implications here?" "Multiple federal crimes," he replied immediately. "Bribery, corruption, conspiracy. The FBI's Public Corruption Unit would be very interested in this." "Make the call," Alicia directed. "But tell them we're going public tomorrow morning. They can either get ahead of this or catch up later." Throughout the day, her team worked frantically to prepare. Sasha coordinated with media outlets, while Thomas drafted statements. Janet's people created secure backups of everything, protecting against possible cyber retaliation. Late afternoon brought confirmation from Marcus's investigators. Every document was authentic. The recordings hadn't been altered. The evidence was overwhelming. As sunset approached, Alicia reviewed the press conference materials one final time. Photos of the bribed regulators, transcripts of Philip and Daniel's conversations, bank records showing suspicious payments, everything needed to expose their corruption. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She almost declined it, but something made her answer. "Ms. Rhodes," a woman's voice, professional and direct. "This is Special Agent Sarah Chen, FBI Public Corruption Unit. We need to meet tonight." "Regarding Philip Lancaster and Daniel Rourke?" Alicia asked carefully. "And the evidence you've collected. We're prepared to open a formal investigation, but we need to move quickly. Can you come to our field office in an hour?" Alicia checked the time. "With my attorney?" "Of course. We'll have U.S. attorneys present as well." "This is serious, Ms. Rhodes. What you've uncovered, it goes beyond elite jets." Thomas arrived within minutes of her call. As they rode the elevator down to her waiting car, he reviewed federal statutes on his tablet. "They'll want us to hold the press conference," he warned. "Keep everything quiet while they build their case." "They can want whatever they like," Alicia replied. "But I'm not letting Philip and Daniel control the narrative one more day. We go public tomorrow as planned." Her driver took a circuitous route to the federal building, watching for tails. Security was waiting to escort them directly to a conference room where Agent Chen and two prosecutors sat with stacks of files. "Thank you for coming," Chen began, but Alicia raised her hand. "Before we start," she said firmly, "understand this. I'm holding a press conference tomorrow morning. I'm releasing everything we have. I'll cooperate fully with your investigation, but I won't delay exposing what they've done." The prosecutors exchanged glances. Chen smiled slightly. "Actually, Ms. Rhodes, we're counting on it. Your press conference will smoke out more witnesses. We just needed to ensure your evidence was solid before we moved forward with criminal charges." For the next 2 hours, they reviewed the recordings and documents. The prosecutors took detailed notes, while Chen outlined the scope of potential charges, not just against Philip and Daniel, but against multiple regulators and other executives. "This is bigger than elite jets," Chen explained. "We've suspected corruption in private aviation for years, but could never prove it. You've given us the key to unraveling their whole network." As they prepared to leave, Chen handed Alicia her card. The moment you finish your press conference tomorrow, we'll execute search warrants. By noon, Mr. Lancaster and Mr. Rourke will be in custody. In the car heading home, Thomas reviewed his notes. They're serious about prosecution. Multiple federal charges, possible RICO implications. Philip and Daniel won't just lose their company. They're looking at prison time. Alicia watched the city lights blur past her window. Tomorrow would change everything. Justice was finally within reach. The January morning was still dark when Alicia's car pulled up to the federal building in Lower Manhattan. Frost coated the windows, and her breath made small clouds in the cold air as she and Thomas walked to the entrance. Security guards checked their IDs twice before escorting them through a maze of corridors. Agent Chen met them in a windowless conference room where 3 other agents and 2 prosecutors sat reviewing files. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the serious faces around the table. "Ms. Rhodes, Mr. Whitaker," Chen greeted them, gesturing to empty chairs. "Thank you for coming in so early. We wanted to brief you before your press conference." Alicia set her briefcase on the table, noting the thick folders labeled "Elite Jets Investigation" spread before each person. "I assume you've verified everything we provided?" "Multiple times," one of the prosecutors, a sharp-featured woman in her 50s, confirmed. "I'm Amanda Torres, lead prosecutor. The evidence is solid. More than solid. It's devastating." The other prosecutor, James Wilson, opened one of the files. "We've already secured sealed indictments against Philip Lancaster and Daniel Rourke. The moment your press conference ends, we move." "What exactly does that mean?" Thomas asked, pulling out his legal pad. Agent Chen activated a wall screen showing a timeline. "At approximately 11 a.m., you'll begin your press conference. By 11:30, we expect you to have revealed the key evidence. At that point, we'll execute simultaneous search warrants at Elite Jets' offices in New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. Lancaster and Rourke will be taken into custody," Torres added, "along with 3 senior regulators and their chief financial officer. We've had surveillance teams in place since yesterday." Alicia studied the timeline. "And the charges?" Wilson listed them off. "Conspiracy to commit bribery, wire fraud, corruption of federal officials, obstruction of justice, possible RICO violations if we can prove the broader pattern of discrimination you've uncovered." "The recordings are particularly damning," Chen noted. "Their cavalier attitude about bribing regulators, the racist comments. It paints a clear picture of systemic corruption." Thomas leaned forward. "What about potential retaliation against Alicia's company? They still have powerful friends." "We've frozen their personal accounts and major company assets," Torres assured them. "They won't be able to cause any more financial damage. And we've flagged any attempts to transfer or hide funds." An assistant brought in coffee as they reviewed the detailed arrest plans. Alicia sipped the bitter liquid, watching the agents coordinate with field teams via secure phones. The machinery of justice was finally moving. "There is one concern," Chen said after a pause. "We've detected unusual activity around some of Elite Jet's encrypted servers. They may be trying to destroy evidence." "Can you stop them?" Alicia asked. "Our cyber team is monitoring. But this is another reason we need to move fast. Once your press conference starts, we'll have probable cause to seize their systems before they can delete anything else." Thomas made more notes. "What about the regulatory investigation they initiated against Rhodes Aviation?" "Already handled," Wilson replied. "We've suspended the compromised regulators and frozen that investigation. Your company's assets should be released by end of day." Alicia felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Her employees' jobs were safe. The threats to their livelihoods would end. "We do need to discuss your personal security," Chen continued. "Until the arrests are complete, we'd like to assign protective details to you and key members of your team." "Is that necessary?" Alicia asked, though she already knew the answer. Torres nodded grimly. Lancaster and Rourke are facing potential prison terms. People in their position sometimes make desperate choices when cornered. We're not taking any chances. They spent the next hour reviewing security protocols and coordinating press conference logistics. Federal agents would be posted throughout the venue, watching for any signs of trouble. "One last thing," Chen said as they prepared to leave. She slid a document across the table. "We'd like you to consider testifying before a grand jury next week. Your direct experience with their discrimination and retaliation would be powerful evidence." Alicia read through the request. "Of course. Whatever helps ensure they face consequences." "We'll have agents escort you to your office," Torres said, standing. "The protective detail will remain in place until we have Lancaster and Rourke in custody." As they gathered their materials, Wilson added, "What you've done here, Ms. Rhodes, exposing this corruption, standing up to their intimidation, it's remarkable. You've helped us crack a case we've been building for years." In the hallway, Thomas checked his watch. 3 hours until the press conference. "Are you ready?" Alicia thought about the long path that had led here. The humiliation on the tarmac, the threats, the smear campaign, but also the support she'd received, the allies who'd stood with her, the evidence that had emerged at crucial moments. "More than ready," she replied. "It's time they learned that actions have consequences." They rode the elevator down in silence, both processing the weight of what was coming. In a few hours, everything would change. The truth would be public. The arrests would begin. Justice would be set in motion. At the building's entrance, Alicia paused to look at the brightening sky. Hope mixed with anxiety in her chest. They had the evidence, they had federal support, but experience had taught her that powerful men didn't fall easily. There would be more battles ahead. Agent Chen appeared beside her. "We've got your back, Ms. Rhodes. By this afternoon, Lancaster and Rourke will be doing perp walks in handcuffs." Alicia nodded, straightening her shoulders as she walked to her waiting car. Federal agents fell into formation around them, a visible reminder that she was no longer fighting this battle alone. Camera flashes erupted as Alicia stepped onto the podium at the Riverside Conference Center. The massive room was packed with journalists, industry leaders, and civil rights advocates. Thomas stood to her right, while prominent black executives and community leaders filled the seats behind her in a powerful show of solidarity. Alicia adjusted the microphone, her burgundy suit crisp against the blue backdrop. Security teams positioned throughout the room kept watchful eyes on the crowd. She could feel the tension, the anticipation of what she was about to reveal. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady and clear. "2 weeks ago, I walked across a tarmac in the Hamptons, prepared to finalize a $770 million joint venture with Elite Jets. Instead, I encountered something all too familiar to many of us: naked discrimination and the arrogant assumption that power means immunity from consequences." The room fell silent as she described that morning in detail, the sneers, the whispers, the dirty plane meant to humiliate her. Her measured tone made the story even more powerful. "But this isn't just about one incident of discrimination," she continued. "What followed was a coordinated campaign of retaliation, intimidation, and corruption that reaches into the highest levels of the aviation industry." Thomas handed her a tablet. The large screens behind her lit up with screenshots of threatening emails and social media posts. Elite Jets' owners launched a smear campaign, spreading lies about my mental stability and business acumen. She scrolled through examples. "When that didn't work, they attempted to destroy my company by bribing federal regulators to launch a fraudulent investigation." Gasps rippled through the audience. Reporters typed frantically on laptops. But Philip Lancaster and Daniel Rourke made a crucial mistake. Alicia tapped the tablet again. "They got careless. They talked too much. And now, you'll hear their own words expose their crimes. The room speakers crackled with Lancaster's distinctive voice. Of course, the regulators will do what we want. That's what the payments are for. We'll freeze her assets, ruin her reputation. Let's see how uppity she feels then. Rourke's voice followed. No black CEO is going to show us up. We own this industry. By the time we're done, Rhodes Aviation will be finished. More recordings played, discussions of bribe amounts, jokes about putting her in her place, plans to destroy evidence. Each clip landed like a hammer blow. Some journalists shook their heads in disgust. These recordings have been authenticated and are now part of a federal investigation, Alicia announced. But the corruption goes deeper. We've uncovered a years-long pattern of discrimination in how Elite Jets treats minority-owned businesses and employees. She gestured to the row of former Elite Jets employees seated nearby. These brave individuals have come forward with their own stories. Their testimonies reveal systematic exclusion, harassment, and retaliation against anyone who dared to speak up. Thomas stepped forward with a thick stack of documents. We are filing a civil rights lawsuit today detailing these violations. The full complaint is available to media outlets, along with supporting evidence. Alicia gripped the podium edges. To Philip Lancaster, Daniel Rourke, and others who believe their wealth places them above the law. That time is over. To every person who has faced discrimination and been told to stay quiet, your voices matter. Your experiences matter. And justice is possible. The questions erupted immediately. Ms. Rhodes, have federal authorities confirmed criminal charges? What damages are you seeking in the lawsuit? How long has this discrimination been happening? She handled each query with composed precision, never revealing more than planned. Thomas fielded the legal questions, while civil rights leaders added context about systemic racism in corporate America. An hour later, Alicia concluded, "This press conference isn't just about exposing corruption. It's about standing up to bullies who think money equals power. It's about showing that dignity and determination can overcome discrimination." Thank you. The applause was thunderous. Reporters shouted more questions as security escorted Alicia and her team through a side exit. In the hallway, her phone buzzed with breaking news alerts. Federal raids underway at Elite Jets offices. Back at Rhodes Aviation's headquarters, champagne corks popped in the executive suite. Staff members hugged and cheered as they watched news coverage of Lancaster and Rourke being led out of their offices in handcuffs. Alicia's assistant, Sasha, rushed in with a tablet. The stories everywhere. Look at these headlines. Aviation giants arrested in corruption probe. Black CEO exposes industry-wide discrimination. Thomas raised his glass. To Alicia Rhodes, who taught them that karma comes with consequences. And to this incredible team, Alicia added, looking around at her loyal staff. You stood strong through every threat and challenge. We did this together. The celebration was warm but restrained. They all knew the fight wasn't over. Legal battles lay ahead. The industry would resist change. Powerful people would seek revenge. Sasha noticed Alicia checking her security feeds. The protective detail is still in place, she assured her boss. And IT is monitoring all our systems. Alicia nodded, sipping her champagne. Today was a victory. Justice set in motion, truth exposed, corruption revealed. But experience had taught her to stay vigilant, to guard against backlash while pushing forward with purpose. She watched her team celebrate, their joy tempered with determination. They had struck a blow against discrimination and corruption. Now they had to ensure the changes they fought for would last. Alicia sat at her desk, watching multiple news feeds on the wall-mounted screens. Her normally pristine office showed signs of the intense week: stacks of legal documents, empty coffee cups, and takeout containers from late-night strategy sessions. Breaking news: federal agents raid Elite Jet's headquarters, scrolled across the bottom of every major network. Sasha burst through the door, tablet in hand. They got them, both of them. Her usual professional composure cracked with excitement. Live helicopter footage showed FBI agents leading Philip Lancaster out of his gleaming corporate tower. His perfectly tailored suit couldn't hide his rage as agents guided his handcuffed form toward a waiting vehicle. The smug smile he'd worn at the airfield was gone, replaced by a scowl of disbelief. "Look at his face," Sasha said, perching on the edge of Alicia's desk. He really thought he was untouchable. Minutes later, another feed showed Daniel Rourke's arrest at his Hamptons estate. Unlike Philip's angry display, Daniel maintained his icy composure, until agents began loading boxes of documents into federal vehicles. His calm cracked as he watched years of hidden dealings being carted away. Sources confirm simultaneous raids at multiple Elite Jets locations, a reporter announced. Federal agents are seizing computers, financial records, and communications dating back 5 years. The investigation stems from allegations of corruption, bribery of federal officials, and systematic discrimination. Alicia leaned back in her chair, her expression neutral despite the vindication playing out on screen. "Send a message to legal. I want our team monitoring every development. And check on our security protocols again." "Already done," Sasha replied. "Thomas is reviewing the warrant details now. And look at this." She pulled up social media feeds on her tablet. Their stock is in free fall. Major clients are canceling contracts. The board called an emergency meeting. The news coverage shifted to business analysts discussing Elite Jet's likely collapse. "This is unprecedented in private aviation," one expert declared. "The evidence Ms. Rhodes presented leaves no room for denial. The recordings alone—" "Turn up the volume," Alicia said, leaning forward as they played clips from her press conference. "Industry insiders tell us Elite Jets may not survive this scandal," the analyst continued. "Beyond the criminal charges, they face massive civil penalties and an exodus of high-profile clients. Their discrimination against minority-owned businesses appears systematic and deliberate." Sasha scrolled through more updates. 3 board members have resigned already. Their biggest investors are demanding emergency audits. And look, other executives from their partner companies are stepping down. "Like rats leaving a sinking ship," Alicia murmured, watching Philip's scowling face on screen again. The coverage cut to archived footage of the 2 men at luxury events, showcasing their former glory. Philip Lancaster raising champagne toasts on his mega yacht, Daniel Rourke hosting elite gatherings at his mountain lodge, their world of untouchable privilege crumbling in real time. "Ms. Rhodes?" Sasha's voice softened. "Do you remember what you told me in the helicopter that day? About not letting bullies dictate your worth?" Alicia turned from the screens, meeting her assistant's gaze. "I remember. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for everyone they've hurt, everyone they look down on." Sasha gestured at her tablet. "Look at these messages pouring in. From employees they mistreated, businesses they crushed, people inspired by your courage." A small smile touched Alicia's lips. "We stood up together. Every person on our team who stayed strong through their threats. Every former employee who came forward. Every ally who stood with us." Breaking news alerts flashed again. The Elite Jets board had suspended both men and was cooperating with federal investigators. Their private jet consortium was grounding flights and facing bankruptcy. "Their legal team is in chaos," Sasha reported, reading incoming messages. 3 law firms have dropped them as clients, And the Aviation Authority is launching a full industry review of discriminatory practices. Alicia watched Philip being processed on screen, his designer suit exchanged for prison orange. The man who'd sneered at her on the tarmac, who'd thought his money made him invincible, stripped of his power. "Should I order champagne?" Sasha asked with a grin. "The team wants to celebrate." "Not yet," Alicia replied. "Let's wait for the indictments. Keep monitoring everything. Their associates, the regulatory response, any signs of retaliation." They sat in comfortable silence, watching justice unfold across the news feeds. Decades of discrimination and corruption exposed. An empire built on prejudice and privilege, collapsing. The truth, finally, too loud to ignore. "It's really over, isn't it?" Sasha said softly. Alicia studied the headlines declaring elite jet's downfall, the footage of federal agents boxing up evidence, the scroll of charges that would end Philip and Daniel's reign. "Yes," she answered. "This chapter is over." She turned to her assistant, her friend, who'd stood beside her through every challenge. "They thought they could humiliate us, break us, erase everything we've built. They never understood that real power comes from dignity, not dominance." Sasha wiped away tears as they watched Philip and Daniel's mug shots replace their polished corporate portraits on screen. "From that awful morning to this moment, we did it. We really did it." "We did," Alicia agreed, her quiet satisfaction more powerful than any celebration. Justice doesn't always come quickly, but it does come. They sat together, watching history change, two women who'd faced down giants and won. On the screens, Philip and Daniel's world continued to crumble, proof that no amount of money could shield them from the consequences of their actions. The headlines kept rolling. Aviation giants fall, corruption empire crumbles, justice prevails. But for Alicia and Sasha, the greatest victory wasn't in the breaking news. It was in the simple truth that dignity and determination had overcome discrimination. That bullies, no matter how wealthy or powerful, could be held accountable. That justice, when pursued with unwavering resolve, would ultimately prevail. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Alicia's corporate headquarters as she signed the final documents, unfreezing her company's accounts. Her CFO, Marcus Chen, stood nearby reviewing transaction logs on his tablet. "All systems are back online," Marcus reported, relief evident in his voice. "Payroll processing will complete within the hour." Alicia set down her pen, shoulders relaxing slightly. "Send an all-staff message. I want everyone to know their back pay will be deposited today, with interest." "Already drafted." Marcus showed her the notification. "I've also included details about the bonus structure you approved." Down in the office bullpen, a cheer erupted as employees' phones buzzed with payment notifications. The sound of celebration spread floor by floor, weeks of financial strain finally lifting. Sasha appeared in the doorway, grinning. "You might want to see this." Alicia followed her assistant to the main floor, where dozens of employees had gathered. Some were hugging, others wiping away tears of relief. When they spotted Alicia, the crowd broke into applause. "Thank you for fighting for us," called out Sarah from accounting, her voice thick with emotion. "For not giving up when they tried to destroy everything." "You stood by me through all of it," Alicia responded, her usual reserve softening. "This victory belongs to every person in this room." More staff members shared their gratitude for protecting their jobs, for maintaining their health benefits even when accounts were frozen, for showing that integrity could triumph over corruption. "I know these weeks have been difficult," Alicia addressed the group. "You've shown extraordinary loyalty and resilience. Starting today, we are not just resuming normal operations, we're expanding. The bonus structure is just the beginning." She outlined new initiatives: improved health care coverage, education subsidies for employees' children, expanded parental leave. With each announcement, the excitement in the room grew. This company was built on the belief that success and ethics aren't mutually exclusive, Alicia continued. What we've endured has only strengthened that foundation. Back in her office, Alicia reviewed RSVPs for that evening's Aviation Industry Ethics Gala. The annual event had taken on special significance in the wake of Elite Jets' collapse. The guest list has doubled, Sasha noted, scrolling through updates. Every major aviation company wants to be seen supporting ethical leadership now. Funny how that works. Convenient timing, Alicia agreed dryly. But if it drives real change in the industry, I'll take it. Her phone buzzed with a message from Thomas Whitaker, her attorney. The regulatory reform package they'd proposed was gaining support. Major carriers were voluntarily adopting new anti-discrimination policies. Your speech is ready for review, Sasha said, pulling up the document. Though after everything, I think you could speak from the heart and bring down the house. Alicia skimmed the prepared remarks, making minor adjustments. Sometimes the most powerful message is the simplest truth, that dignity and determination can overcome discrimination. That justice may be delayed, but it will be served. As evening approached, her glam team arrived to prepare her for the gala. They styled her hair in elegant twists, applied subtle makeup that enhanced her natural beauty, and helped her into a stunning royal blue gown. "The car's ready," Sasha announced, herself elegant in a silver cocktail dress. "Security reports the red carpet is packed with press." Alicia stood before the mirror, adjusting her grandmother's pearl necklace, a reminder of the strength that ran in her blood. Then, let's not keep them waiting. Their arrival at the gala created a media frenzy. Cameras flashed as Alicia emerged from the car, poised and regal. Reporters called out questions about Elite Jet's downfall and the future of the industry. Inside the venue, aviation executives who had once dismissed her now rushed to shake her hand. Their effusive praise rang hollow, but Alicia maintained her gracious demeanor. She knew their sudden support was less about justice and more about protecting their own interests. "Ms. Rhodes," the event chairman approached, beaming. "We've adjusted the program slightly. The Leadership Award presentation will come right after dinner." Alicia nodded, though she hadn't known about any award. She caught Sasha's small smile and realized her assistant had kept this detail secret. During dinner, video screens played highlights from the past months, clips from her viral podcast interview, footage of her press conference, news coverage of Elite Jets' collapse. The room fell silent as they watched justice unfold again. When the chairman returned to the podium, his tone was solemn. "Tonight, we honor a leader who exposed corruption, confronted discrimination, and demonstrated that true power lies in unwavering integrity. Please welcome Alicia Rhodes." The ballroom erupted in applause as Alicia made her way to the stage. Hundreds of industry leaders rose to their feet, the standing ovation thunderous. She caught glimpses of familiar faces, her loyal team members, allies who had stood with her, even former Elite Jets employees who had come forward with evidence. The chairman presented her with a crystal award inscribed with words about courage and ethics. But it was the sustained applause, the genuine respect in the room, that carried the real weight. This wasn't just recognition of her victory. It was acknowledgement that the industry needed to change. Alicia stepped to the microphone, waiting for the ovation to quiet. She set aside the prepared speech, remembering Sasha's words about speaking from the heart. "Thank you," she began, her voice clear and strong. "But this recognition belongs to every person who refused to be silenced, to every employee who stood firm in the face of threats, to every whistleblower who chose truth over security, to every ally who proved that justice is stronger than prejudice. She paused, looking out over the crowd. We are not here to celebrate the fall of corrupt leaders. We are here to commit to building something better. An industry where success is measured not just in profits, but in principles. Where doors are opened, not closed. Where dignity is valued above dominance. The applause resumed, growing louder with each point. Alicia saw tears in some eyes, determination in others. She saw leaders who finally understood that change wasn't just moral. It was essential. The path forward is clear, she concluded. We can choose fear or courage, discrimination or dignity, division or unity. I know which path I'll take. Who will walk it with me? The standing ovation that followed shook the chandeliers, a wave of sound that carried the weight of real commitment. As Alicia returned to her seat, Sasha squeezed her hand. They had done more than win a battle. They had started a revolution. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.